Okay, so welcome back to this short series on learning why and how local global collaboration enhances design from the All Africa Village project based in Harare in Zimbabwe. Last time we got the opportunity to know and hear the story of the village directly from the project leader uh, Chico Chasungusa, and shared the experience with the architect Dr. Siade. So now we come to discuss the learning together process. So we want to come back a little bit to a key element of this project. So could you please tell us, why do you think local global collaboration enhances design? Like, why is this important? And more specifically, like, how did the exposure to global design thinking methods or case studies like expanded the design toolkit that you use for this project?
I think first of all, it is about acknowledging and appreciating what's already there, what's kind of available on the side where you are deciding to work on. And what helped me actually quite a lot in the past with my designs or with the complete, like with the planning process, is to um, listen, to actually listen to the people who are going to live in that space in the future once the construction site is done. Because as an architect, I do spend a lot of time with the community of the project I work on, but compared to the time that the building is being in use afterwards, it's kind of nothing. So I want to learn from the people who are going to use, who live, who work in those spaces. And by learning from them, I try to kind of switch off my own knowledge that I like gained through the German university the education, and try to understand. And but this could happen for sure also the other way around, because I don't want to just say I delete everything that I have learned, for example, just to be in the project. Also the other way around, we can learn from each other. So I might have made some experiences on my construction sites in Zimbabwe, but also on my construction sites and architecture projects in Germany or in other countries where I have been working. But I think the main idea is, or the most important, point is to understand each other, to be willing to learn from each other and not just go and put your idea and mean it good, mean it better, and so on. For sure, everyone has an idea and everyone has an understanding of things, but how do we get together? Because for sure we work together if we are like planning a project like this gallery space. And because this is a project in Zimbabwe, this is why I feel I need to get more into the Zimbabwean understanding of life, of work, and so on, instead of the other way around. But still, for sure, it's kind of a circle that we are in, that we for sure always influence each other when we work together.
It's perfect. I think it's really important to highlight the willingness from learning from each other. We have different knowledges that we can influence each
Mm.
other and then design something as the project that you just described with Chico.
Mm.
Um,
Because um, one, like my design-based PhD is has two parts. The first part is more a documentation of what I have built already. The second part is the transformation of those results into the new project, architecture project, which is the gallery that we for sure talk about today at Zimbanete. But when I did the documentation of the first project, I that was the initial idea of starting the PhD is I saw by living on that site, by living in the community, I saw there's some kind of cultural influence coming, or like kind of influence coming from the cultural background of our workers on site, that is shaping connections, joins, like details of different materials. But I wanted to find out why and how does this happen. And this is when I started sketching or like drawing all the different joints of that building, the school building, like the way we planned it, the way we built it the first time, and then the way we built it in the final step, because we had different like 7 construction phases. So for sure we changed things in the on the way. We did not build everything the way we planned it. I think that's normal, but in this way, I found out that there's some kind of like unconscious knowledge that coming from the traditional building past of our workers, getting into the new details that we developed together on site. And when I was drawing this, it was, and I also like I was not only drawing these 3 steps, I also added the traditional Zimbabwean way of building and the contemporary Zimbabwean way of building. So this is when I saw there's a link between the traditional way of building and how we changed our details on site without actually planning, just by trying out things. And this was somehow the starting point when I saw there is a link between those traditional knowledge of the workers who live in Zimbabwe, who know about all these different traditional techniques and so on, which are not like documented in books, but they are available in, yeah, through their knowledge, their minds, and so on. Yeah, so maybe this is where I come from and how I found out in my projects what's somehow available if you just take a look. And I used, just to take the look, I used this my sketches, my drawings as part of the documentation.
Yeah, no, I thank you for that insight, because sometimes I think into urban planning and design, the local experience is sometimes taken for granted and not listened to. And those are the people that are gonna live the space, that are gonna use the space. So yeah,
Exactly.
getting to know like the living and experiencing first time, it's life changing and also design changing as
Design
well.
changing, yes.
Okay. I think the world, for a long time, the world has been there's been fake boundaries in terms of knowledge. There's been even with the advent of globalization. It globalization basically to me has been preaching a oneness, but from one corner, wanting to spread knowledge from one corner to everywhere else. Uh, and
Yeah.
that's not enough. That has left the creative world and the world of design still in isolation. I believe what we are now doing, like what this generation is now doing, of like connecting with people from the other side of the globe, and to be sharing ideas about who we are, enables the creation of newness, real newness, because that thing which is in between has not necessarily been seen. Yes, we've had influences, right? Influences like, okay, things that happened in Europe, ABC, they were influenced by Africa, they were influenced by Africa, but it was never like two platforms sharing on an equal footing. And when we collaborate with people like Christine, we're coming in on an equal footing. We don't have the same knowledge, the same qualifications, but we are valuing what each person has. We are valuing what each person is bringing to the table to create what's needed. And this thing that's needed, we all feel it has to exist. It has to be made, and it has to be made. We're team players, basically. And so I believe these collaborations enable really what we can call new design, and particularly when they're coming from two entities. I studied, say, in Europe, I studied art in Europe. I came back, I started fusing what I had learned together with my locality, my local knowledge. But that's not the same. Here we're talking about two separate entities, one coming from Europe, one coming from Africa, and sitting side by side, discussing, negotiating. Yes, like you said earlier, there could have been conflicts, but in this case, there were no conflicts because all ideas seemed to merge very well. So I believe that kind of collaboration is the only collaboration that brings about new ideas. Ideas that even the locals can appreciate, even those on the other side of the globe can appreciate as well. They speak well to them both.
I think that's beautiful. How you have brought in like a different architect with a different background from a different culture that has managed to respect the boundaries, the spirituality, the values of the place, and be able to design accordingly. I think that's that's how it should be, and that's a beautiful concept. My next question would be, what did the community teach you about taste making rooted in rhythm, in ritual, and artistic expression?
Yeah, thank you. From an early age, because we grew up in communities, and these communities are the very schools of culture and tradition. And basically, traditions are the aesthetics of culture. You follow the traditions, you stick with the traditions. It means you're good with the culture, the indigenous culture. Uh, there is much ado in our culture about sacredness, about spaces, and spaces are very important. We are maybe too deep, but very fortunate that in this space where we are in Zimbabwe, there is lots ado about sacredness, that that mountain is sacred, or that space over there, that open space is sacred. You don't do A, B, C over there. And people appreciate that. People live by that. When you have to go into build, for example, in the modern world, contemporary world, you have to approach the city councils to acquire or to obtain land. While with these projects of ours, we still have to do that, but we go further than the city councils to acknowledge our presence to the land, to the real owners of the land. And that we're taught in the community, that you don't just build a structure. Even if you've bought a piece of land, you don't just build. You have to acknowledge those who lived in that land before, or maybe those who are even buried underneath that earth. You have to acknowledge them. Tell them, I'm so and so, the child of so and so, who comes from this clan, and I'm here not to fight, but to ask and petition for you to allow me to build my house here or to build my structure here. These are concepts that are basically within the people because of understanding that which is sacred. So again, going on to what's being built, it's giving it that soul, giving it that relationship with the land, giving it that relationship to the people and to nature. Uh, in terms of creativity, well, what's created also, we believe that just doesn't come from somebody's head, but that person is inspired by a spirit that they work with. Their guardian spirit is the one that gives them ideas to shape around and create objects. So a gallery space, for example, becomes a sacred space also because it's full of sacred things that have been made by people. It's not only that which was made a long time ago that's sacred. Even things that are made today are also sacred because they are made from the same hands, from the same spirit that created that which we cherish from yesteryear. That's our understanding of the art world.
The balance of the indigenous knowledge as the local communities, right? And what you have learned from the design aspect. has that changed your view on architecture and how you wanted or you envisioned the whole thing to be designed?
Maybe not directly like sorry, I would say, let's start again. How I changed my design methods is maybe not directly from someone or from the community. Maybe it's more this way that I have explained to you through this research that I have been working on. I'm trying to, like what I did at Zimbanete for the design is setting up those five principles. I call them cultural-based design principles, and they are very site-specific because it's not something general. You cannot just build a building on one side and exactly the same on another side with completely different environment and circumstances. But in that case, I developed those five principles, and this is what I designed with. And it was super fun. The design process itself was also like a week that I spent at their site, and that I was not just done with the design. For sure, it needs further planning steps. But this is what I would really like to also bring into my the future architecture projects that I create through through the knowledge of my research, that I create principles that help me to design. And those ideally are culture based because this is what I'm just absolutely interested in, and which definitely is not taught enough at the universities or at schools, in my opinion. So I hope this can work out. It does not work, it does not function for all kind of building typologies. For example, I've been working on another school project. There are a lot of regulations, there are like wishes and laws that you have to rely on coming like from the ministries, for example. So it is not that flexible as, for example, this gallery space where you are much more free in your design decisions.
That's great, Christina. Thank you so much for staying with us, regardless of the technical issues. I think my biggest takeaway from the project and from all your insights and from all Chico's insights is that it's important to find those differences and celebrate those differences, think through dialogue and communication and willing and the openness of seeing the world through different eyes as yours, but also what you say, I think it's really important to not forget your knowledge, to not delete it completely, but see
Mm.
how it can be negotiated with different words. I think it's really valuable.
Yes, indeed. Like like I said earlier, I may expand on that. Having talked to Christine about all these concepts, I had no idea what she was going to come up with. Honestly, I had no idea. All I knew as I had expressed what our architecture and indigenous architecture is all about to someone who's an architect, and I was waiting to see what she could come up with. And what she came up with uh, really impressed me, basically as an artist. That okay, this is monumental. This is something people can even come to see. That wow, it functions like this, yet it's built like this. These are still round buildings, kind of different top. Now you don't have the straw, you don't have the thatch, but it's bricks all over. And I'd never thought of a house or a structure looking that way. And so, not just me, but I think a lot of people who are going to view this, including the engineer we are working with now, who actually commented yesterday that he would love a house like that. And he knows many people are going to see uh, it's a piece of art. Basically, Christina has come up with a piece of art, and art inspires people. Art awakens people. And that's what she has done with her intervention here. She's awakened another side of how something could be built with modern architecture but still carry the soul, built with bricks and still be within the confinements of what we regard as sacred. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that answer, because last time that we got the chance to ask her more about this question, she mentioned something really valuable, and she said that she didn't delete it completely, like the experience she had before, but she had the willingness to hear and to also experiment the life in there. So I think it's really valuable how these both worlds got combined and how you adopted the methodologies to design. And well, one of our last questions was if you have adopted any methodologies or frameworks from this negotiation that has processed and shaped your design process regularly, like nowadays. Like, how do you see that incorporated in your work nowadays and for the future?
Um, to that, I would say basically that there is always the next step. And whatever we will be building now, and wherever, normally we work with technicians from those cultures. Like if we're going to build a homestead from Namibia, from the Himba people, for example, we bring in a Himba person and they do their orthodox building the way it's done. But for me now, it's like after Christina has generated that design, it's like, okay, you can always get the concepts and still move on to a different kind of materiality, if you will. It always works. You can just take the equation and still proceed to create something totally, totally new. That's what I've learned here. And I'm sure also with the way we work when we're building the traditional indigenous arts, the community, and how each one has their part to play. The man stack the poles, put the roof structures, and do the thatching. And the women, particularly in Southern Africa, the women do the walls, the plastering of the walls. In East Africa, you get women thatching, climbing on top of the roofs and thatching. So again, I think when the building of these new designs come into play, we're also going to learn a lot in terms of the interaction now of who does what and what goes where and how do people socialize when they are building. I've known builders to be sort of the rough end of the society. They have this language that they use when they are building. So I'd like to see whether that's the same in that end, or is still the same sort of respectful singing environment that you get when you're building indigenous structures. So yeah, we have a lot also to see when we get to establish the real structures. But for now, yes, we've learned how to flip the context to become something new.
Hmm. I think the other thing that's interesting about this project is the economic part of it. Like you are sourcing everything locally, the materials, the labor, how economic has it been? Or do you think it's going to be to implement this whole thing?
Um, it's almost similar when building these the all Africa village structures. Uh, yeah, the grass grows around, and the community is always harvesting the straw, and we can always purchase it from them. There are timber companies that bring timber close by, so within 10 kilometers we get everything we need. Actually, like, yeah, 7 kilometers we get everything we need. And for Christina's structures, which are brick, it's actually maybe about yeah, again, about 5 kilometers to where we can get the bricks. So it's still pretty much close. So in terms of sourcing materials, everything is still like quite similar. We don't need to get beyond 10 kilometers to get the materials that we need. So it's still very economic, still very economic.
Well, so first of all, what I have learned from our sites and the community is to build with little money. I think still our project is a bit prestigious, maybe. It's not the cheapest, let's say not the cheapest school that has been built in in the country, I guess, but it has a lot of benefits through this investment, let's say, like the ventilation level that we talked about. For sure, if you have a double roof, it needs a bit more material, which is a bit more expensive and so on. But what I have learned is to still um, work with a lot of like existing materials and to create something new out of it. And maybe not necessarily speaking about new like building components, like walls or materials that you need for the site, but rather on the working side as a tool. You need tools, and you sometimes just build them on your own. You don't go to the shop and buy a machine that you need. You just make it on your own with the materials that you have available on site. And this I found really inspiring to see that you create something, actually you have the same result, the same outcome, but you don't spend money, or you just spend little money on your machines, let's say. And this happened like a lot of times within those 7 years that I have been working on site. And maybe at the beginning, the way I was used to see on construction sites is it was a bit not strange, but like far away from my understanding, from my thinking. But the more this happened, and the more I see it, wow, this is really going well, then I understood. It's so creative, much more than maybe me being just by my profession, being like having a creative profession, but how to deal with this in a setting that does not allow you to spend money or to have everything ready and everything available and proper and in like in good quality also. And it's just not necessary. And this is what I have learned. And I try to bring also into my life, like into my daily life. For sure, it's not always possible, but yeah, it's for me a big lessons learned.
Anything else, Laura?
Yeah, maybe just wanting to ask if there's anything else that you would like to add before we go to the closing part. I think regarding that what Lorato was talking about the materials is like what else do you think it's needed to complete this project to yeah, like come over the challenges that you're facing right now?
Um, Eventually, with everything done, all communications and all designs in place, always comes that question of funding. Funding is not really easy. Uh, we are located in these spaces where governments find it very difficult to fund ideas, no matter how brilliant they are. So we've had to make our own means. And really, with infrastructure, you do not get any calls for funding that allow for the building of structures. Normally, it's projects. So that's our main challenge for now, funding. We know for sure once we get to a place where at least we can start with one, at least one of those structures, so that the world can see what our ideas and Christina's ideas have brought out, then the trust becomes easier in terms of understanding what we want to do. So right now we are like gearing ourselves to see how we can hunt for funding, at least to establish one of those structures. I think that's it. Further to that, I think the funding thing is known. Further to that, I believe if collaborations like this can be promoted or encouraged, uh, will quickly better to a globalized world that's really globalized, that has people working together and new ideas coming up. Architecture and all sorts of design need collaboration now more than ever. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us and, giving us your time. And I do hope, through this platform, through this podcast, we do get to have that reach to, other people that are not quite as immense in this concept that we are talking about that could help join in also.
Thank you very much, Lorato.
Yeah, and also from my end, I would just really like to highlight a phrase that I heard from you from another interview. And from this project, I really like how we find those differences and celebrate those differences. I heard you that phrase in one podcast,
Yes.
and I think that's really valuable because even though globalization has been very hierarchical in some narratives, I think finding those differences, it's very valuable in finding new and creative solutions through these projects. So thank you very much for this time.
Thank you, Laura.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye.